investigative journalists hungry for the truth and just won't accept the pablum being spit up by the mainstream media. Alex, it is really shocking because I was among those who was a supporter of Rex Tillerson, at least conceptually on paper. I liked the idea of an outsider, someone who wasn't part of the foggy bottom culture of the U.S. State Department. The fact that Tillerson has been heavily influenced and mentored. Really, his patron, now I learn, is Condoleezza Rice. That is an extraordinary development. Evidently, Steve Bannon was aware of this at the time that Tillerson's name was put forward, but because they were so desperate to have someone to stop Mitt Romney, Tillerson got this job. I can tell you that the logs downstairs at the State Department show that whenever Tillerson is out of the country, which is for the Secretary of State most of the time, well, in those instances, Condoleezza Rice is actually holding meetings inside the State Department with various department heads. We also know that she was instrumental in the placement of a fellow named Brian Hook. Now, Brian Hook is essentially the key spokesperson, the first person Rex Tillerson sees in the morning, the last person he sees at night at the State Department. And Mr. Hook is a hardcore never-Trumper. He was a co-signer of a letter from the John Hay Initiative trashing Donald Trump. This is a neoconservative group that over 100 so-called Republican foreign policy experts co-signed, attacking Trump's foreign policy bona fides and capability. Mr. Hook is now in the State Department. This boggles the mind. I am told that Mr. Hook was pushed for this job by Condoleezza Rice, largely because she seeks to block, there's Mr. Hook, she seeks to block the appointment of a true patriot as NATO ambassador Rick Grenell. Evidently, Rice sees Grenell as a future Secretary of State, which she, of course, sees herself as. She wants a reprise in Washington. This is very bad news for the interventionist wing that elected Donald Trump. Now, the real problem at the State Department, Alex, is that Reince Priebus, the president's chief of staff, refuses to tell the various department heads, let's start at state, this is going to be your assistant secretary for this gentleman is going to be your assistant secretary for that, this woman is going to be your general counsel, and so on. The cabinet officers have this quaint idea that they are allowed to choose their own people without White House vetting, and that is where you get this landing party of neocons. We can show you from the Washington Post by scrolling on the State Department positions. I think we can pull that up, and I will show you what you have here is a stalemate, meaning Priebus refuses to put forward names. The names put forward, let's just roll up here to the state a little bit and you will see what I mean. The State Department puts forward names that are not politically suitable, i.e. anti-Trumpers. There we have 119 positions in state. Let's go through the list here. Just below that, you will see legal advisor, no nominee. Chief financial officer, no nominee. Undersecretary for management, no nominee. Undersecretary for arms control, no nominee. Assistant Secretary for Legislative Affairs, no nominee. And so on, and so on, and so forth, because the State Department puts forward neocons and globalists unacceptable to the White House.
And let me just add this, because we're 110 days in, and admittedly, it's come out that the State Department's in total rebellion against Rex Tillerson, and other agencies are doing the same thing. They just totally ignore him. Nobody good comes forward, or they're all anti-Trumpers. And then they use the national security clearance stuff to have the FBI block anybody that is good. And so we're wondering how this is happening. Is Rex Tillerson a total rube, a total nincompoop, or is he controlled in that he's got Condi in there knowingly sabotaging everything, or is he just doing this, you know, to try to be trendy or try to be nice to the old Bushes? You know, is he a naive ne'er-do-well? Because you look at this, we're 110 days in, and basically none of the top positions. That's kind of good. It's showing at least it's being blocked by somebody knows what's going on, but it's also bad because nothing's happened.
In a sense, let me be clear. The reason you have a logjam is the White House must make the nominations, not the departments. They don't make the nominations. So the departments are sending over their candidates. The White Houses are blocking them. No one is nominated. Stalemate. Empty. And the problem with that, Alex, is the Obama mice are in those positions. They continue to run the government in all those
So
positions.
that's why it's not a stalemate. That's why them only giving them never Trumpers keeps the Obama people in.
And whose fault is this? Let me explain this. This is the fault of Reince Priebus. Do you think Hamilton Jordan or H.R. Bob Haldeman or Andy Card or James A. Baker III would have not gone to the department head and said, this is the person you're nominating for this job. This is the person you're nominating for this job. This is the person we're nominating for this job. There is no sign off. It has never worked that way. But someone gave Rex the idea that he could choose his own people. And let me point out to you, the first one he wanted was Elliot Abrams.
Neocon.
A neocon bad guy. Darth Vader, for God's sakes. Why don't we just get Richard Pearl himself in here? This is an absurdity.
The Prince of Darkness.
I blame Reince for the logjam. By the way, this is throughout the government. We're just using State Today as an example.
So we're now documenting how Trump's been sabotaged from within. And while we think it's just a stalemate, it's not. The Obama people are in there beavering away as usual, running State Department with congressional hearings saying we're Russian agents with no proof, saying shut down the free press as they direct Google in a jihad against the American resistance.
And not only that, but the idea that we would have a never Trumper blocking a Trump loyalist like Rick Grinnell, who's highly qualified for that NATO post and who did more surrogate speaking and traveling on behalf of the Trump-Pence ticket than virtually any Republican I know, it's an insult.
Sure. So all the real Americana, Freedom Caucus type patriots, none of them that actually got Trump elected or even allowed anywhere near the reins of power because they'd actually do what they said they'd do.
And we have taken some Trump transition documents that we have obtained and determined a list of exactly who Condoleezza Rice has recommended for various positions. And now we are tracing where they are in the White House personnel process.
Well, when can we get Dr. Corsi to publish this? You know, he'd be a great guy to do that.
He would be an ideal person for that story, and I will consult with him almost immediately. The other thing I wanted to touch on is the growing role of Dr. Henry Kissinger. Now, the last time I saw Dr. Kissinger was when Arthur Schwartz and Dr. Kissinger and I dined at Cipriani in New York. He has amazing energy for a man in his 90s. And I can report that Kissinger recently carried a personal message to the Chinese from the president. This was after the Chinese trip to Mar-a-Lago. I cannot tell you the contents of that message. I can only tell you that this back channel diplomacy is working, and we probably have a warmer relationship between the two heads of government, the Chinese and America, than any time during the Obama administration.
All right, so Trump's really pulling off some big coups. Stay there, Roger Stone. Let's come back and break down exactly what this means and how we turn this around. You're getting exclusives here, folks, on why there's a logjam. Roger Stone, continuing here in the time we have left with you. For some, this is probably dry-sounding news. Okay, they're blocking Trump, tell us something we don't know. It's outrageous. It's unprecedented. I've never heard of something like this in modern times in government. And it shows that Trump's trying to block the bad guys. But again, does he get the tactic that then Obama's people, probably even worse, end up staying in power? Don't they get what's happening here? What does Trump need to do?
Well, it is outrageous to me, Alex, that this fellow like Brian Hook, who was an assistant secretary for international organizations in the Bush State Department, was a senior foreign policy advisor to Mitt Romney. Why is this man in the Trump State Department? This is an outrage, and we will see more of it if the logjam is not broken. The president needs an aggressive strategy to fill the second and third levels of government: the deputy secretaries, assistant secretaries, the counselors, the deputy counsels, and so on. We are way behind other presidents in this regard. Now, if the president had appointed a chief of staff like Ed Martin or David Urban and any number of capable people, they would have had a plan in place to select, vet, and jam through their appointees. Instead, you have chaos. No one's told the secretaries they don't make these choices. The White House won't assert itself on the secretaries who must make the choices. It's organized chaos, and the beneficiary is Barack Obama. And the leaks come out of our intelligence services happen because we have not replaced the leakers. This is a giant problem the president must confront.
Now, some could argue the president's trying to hire his opposition, but they're only stabbing him in the back that much more because they have to kill the image of a nationalistic leader. They have to kill that image so other countries don't follow suit. Doesn't Trump know that even if he tries to sell out, which I'm not saying he's doing, they're going to destroy him one way or the other? The only way he wins is defeating these people.
I understand the cosmetics of having some people in your administration who weren't for you in the election. Richard Nixon had Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a noted liberal. He read Moynihan's memos. Then he read Pat Buchanan's memos eviscerating Moynihan's memos. I understand that that kind of symbolicism. There should be a Democrat in this cabinet. Former Congressman Harold Ford Jr., very respected on transportation issues, was more than willing to be in this cabinet, was passed over for Mitch McConnell's wife, who is the longest serving member of the Bush cabinet, Elaine Chao. You tell me.
Absolutely. Well, we got about a minute and a half left here, Roger. What else can we as listeners do?
The president needs a hatchet man, Alex. He needs somebody who understands who elected him, who opposed him, who our constituency out in the country is that we have to keep intact, and goes through these departments and begins firing people. But sadly, most of the firings will have to stop ultimately at the White House, the White House senior staff level. I can't find any Trumpites there. I just can't find them. And whatever Steve Bannon is doing, he was not blocking Rex Tillerson.
Why doesn't Trump bring in a Rand Paul and somebody like a Pat Buchanan to just give him the basic ropes? Pat Buchanan should be in that White House 3 or 4 days a week just advising the president.
Well, it's kind of ironic you say that. Pat did that for Nixon, then he came back and did it for Reagan. And the president and Pat now, despite some old history, get along quite well. On the other hand, I don't think, and I like Rand Paul, and I like a lot of what he's doing, the personality styles of the two men will never mesh. But this can be done at the staff level.